The junkyard silence. The night was heavy in the alien junkyard. Mountains of broken machines, twisted wires, and rusted metal filled the land. The air smelled of oil and dust, and silence pressed down like a weight. Only the faint creak of scrap shifting in the wind could be heard. In the middle of this wasteland sat a figure, an alien girl with silver skin and glowing eyes. She had once been a warrior, strong and fast, but now she was forgotten. Her legs were not her own anymore. They were prosthetic, once shining and powerful. Now they were rusted, broken, and weak. Every step she took made a grinding sound. Her people had cast her out, calling her useless, so she came to the junkyard, a place for things that no longer mattered. She sat on a pile of broken iron, her head bent low. Her hands brushed the cracked metal of her legs. She whispered to herself, "I was not always this way." Memories flashed before her eyes. She had once stood tall in battle, her blades slicing through enemies. But when her legs failed, when her prosthetics rusted, they threw her away like trash. The junkyard was her prison now. She thought she would die here, forgotten under the shadows of broken machines. The stars above gave her no comfort. They seemed far away, cold and silent. Then came the sound. At first it was soft, like pebbles moving under feet. Her sharp ears caught it and her body froze. Someone was walking through the junkyard. She pressed her hand against the dirt, her heart racing. Who would come to this place at night? Scavengers, raiders, or something worse? The sound grew louder, closer, steady footsteps against broken metal. She pushed herself behind an old engine, her rusted legs groaning. Her glowing eyes peeked through a crack. She saw a small light moving between the piles of junk. It was not alien light, not the sharp blue of her people. It was warm, yellow, human light. Then she saw him, a human soldier, tall and tired, walking carefully through the junkyard. He carried a lantern in one hand and a small pack on his back. His uniform was worn, his boots dusty. His face looked rough, but his eyes were steady. He was searching for something, or maybe someone. The alien girl's breath caught. She had heard stories about humans. Some called them dangerous, others called them strange. She did not know what to believe. But what was a human doing here? She stayed hidden. But her rusted legs betrayed her. The sharp creak of metal echoed through the junkyard. The human stopped. His head turned, the lantern light spilling across the piles of broken machines. "Who's there?" he called softly. His voice was calm, not harsh. But the girl shrank back, her heart pounding. She tried to stay silent yet again. Her legs shifted with a loud metallic screech. The human moved closer. He raised the lantern, and the golden glow fell on her face. Her silver skin reflected the light, her eyes glowing like dying stars. The human froze for a moment, surprised. She glared back, ready to defend herself with her bare hands. But instead of fear, the human's face softened. "You're hurt," he said quietly. His voice was steady, almost kind. The alien girl blinked, confused. No one had spoken to her like that in years. She spat back. "Leave me, I am nothing." "Just junk." Her voice was sharp, full of pain. The human stepped closer, slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal. He lowered the lantern and crouched in front of her. His eyes looked at her legs, rusted, cracked, almost useless. He reached out but stopped halfway. Waiting. "I can fix this," he whispered. Her eyes widened. "Why would you help me?" she asked. Humans and aliens were not allies. They were strangers, often enemies. He gave a small smile, tired but true. "Because no one belongs in a junkyard," he said. The girl stared at him, her hands shaking. She had been abandoned, broken, left to rot, and now, this strange human soldier was offering help. Her heart wanted to believe, but her mind screamed no. What if it was a trick? What if he only wanted to use her? She turned away, whispering, "I don't trust you." The human nodded slowly. Not angry, he placed his pack on the ground, opened it and pulled out tools. Metal parts, wires, scraps he had gathered. He spoke without looking at her. "You don't need to trust me yet. Just give me one chance." He started laying the pieces on the ground, sparks glinting in the lantern light. The alien girl's breath caught again. Her mind spun with questions. Why was he here? Why did he care? Why now? The junkyard around them seemed to grow darker, the silence deeper. Only the sound of the human's hands moving through tools broke the stillness. For the first time in years, something inside her flickered. It was not anger, not pain, it was hope. Small and fragile, but before she could speak again, a new sound cut through the night. A long, distant roar echoed across the junkyard. Her eyes widened in fear. The human froze, lifting his head slowly. That sound did not belong to scavengers. It was something far worse. The junkyard was no longer silent. The night had awakened, and danger was coming for both of them. The broken warrior. The roar still echoed across the junkyard. It was not the cry of a beast, not the sound of wind. It was something unnatural, deep and metallic. The alien girl stiffened, her hands gripping the rusted ground. Her glowing eyes shifted to the human, searching his face. He was calm, but his grip tightened around the lantern. For years she had lived with fear. Raiders sometimes passed through the junkyard. They hunted the weak, the broken, the forgotten. She had always hidden, praying they would not find her. But now she was not alone, and that changed everything. The human set the lantern down. His shadow stretched tall against the piles of metal. He looked at her legs again. The rust glistened under the light, the cracks showing like scars. "You can't run like this," he said quietly. "If they come, you won't escape." The alien girl turned her face away, shame burning inside her. She had once been a warrior, proud and strong. Now she was nothing but broken steel. Her people had laughed as they sent her away. "You belong in the scrap heap," they had said. She had believed them. But the human's voice was different. It was steady, not mocking. It held something she thought was long gone, respect. "I don't need saving," she said sharply. Her voice tried to sound strong, but it cracked like old metal. The human didn't argue. Instead, he pulled out tools from his pack. A spark leapt in the dark as he connected wires. He whispered more to himself than to her. "Every machine has life left. If you know where to look." She watched him, confused. Why would a human risk time, risk safety? For her, humans were said to be selfish. But this one was not walking away. He was kneeling in dirt, fixing a stranger. The girl's breath trembled as she whispered, "Why are you here?" The human glanced at her but kept working. "I was sent on a mission," he replied. "I lost my unit. The battlefield pushed me here." He paused, tightening a bolt on her leg. "Then I found you." His words were simple, but they carried weight. Found her in a place where no one else had even looked. Her chest ached with something she could not name. Still, she shook her head. "You don't understand, I'm broken. They left me for a reason." The human met her gaze for the first time. His eyes were dark but full of fire. "I understand more than you think," he said. "I've seen soldiers left behind. I've been left behind too." Silence stretched between them. The junkyard creaked and groaned as if it listened. The alien girl's throat tightened. She had spent years believing she was worthless. And here was a human, once an enemy, repairing her without hesitation. The first repair sparked to life. Her leg twitched, the joint moving smoother than before. She gasped, staring down. It was small, but it was real. For the first time in years, her body obeyed without pain. She lifted her eyes, trembling. "You fixed it." The human gave a faint smile. "Not yet, but I'm trying." Then the sound returned, closer now. The roar turned into voices, rough and cruel. The raiders were here. The girl's heart pounded. She remembered them. Tall alien scavengers with masks of bone and weapons made from scraps. They did not see her as alive. To them, she was only parts to melt. Her glowing eyes widened in panic. "They will kill you if they find you with me," she warned. But the human shook his head, calm. "Then we don't let them find us." The voices grew louder, echoing through the twisted metal. The human grabbed the lantern and pulled her behind a broken engine. His hand was firm but not cruel. "Stay quiet," he whispered. The alien girl pressed close to the shadows, her rusted legs clinking softly. The human placed a hand on her knee, steadying her. Her breath caught, not because of fear, but because no one had ever touched her without disgust. The raiders' footsteps crunched through the junkyard. They dragged chains behind them, searching. One raider's mask glowed red, scanning the piles. "Where is she?" he growled. "She can't hide forever." The girl shivered, every instinct screaming to run, but she could not. Her legs were still weak. The human's grip on her knee tightened, a silent command to stay still. She forced herself to breathe quietly. The raiders passed by, shadows against the moonlit scrap. For a moment it seemed they were safe. Then metal clanged. One raider kicked aside a broken panel and turned. His glowing mask stopped, facing their hiding spot. The human's jaw clenched. The alien girl's eyes widened. The raider growled low and lifted his weapon. The junkyard silence shattered, and the fight for survival had begun. Sparks of hope. The raider's weapon gleamed under the weak lantern light. The alien girl froze, her body trembling. Her rusted legs ached as if they already knew the weight of chains. She had been hunted before, but never with a human standing beside her. The human did not wait. With a swift motion, he threw a chunk of scrap metal. It struck the raider's mask, making the creature stumble back. The sound echoed through the junkyard like thunder. Instantly, more raiders turned their heads. Snarling, the hunt had begun. "Move," the human whispered, pulling her to her feet. Her prosthetic legs screeched as they took her weight. But something was different now. The repairs he had made kept one joint smoother, stronger for the first time in years. She took a step without the sharp stab of pain. She stumbled, then another step, sparks flying but movement steady. Her heart leapt. Her broken body was not fully healed, but it was alive again. The raiders spread out, weapons raised, chains dragged across the ground. They laughed as they closed in. "To the furnaces with her," one growled. "And the human will feed the flames too," another sneered. The human's eyes narrowed. He carried no great weapon, only courage and a steel pipe he had pulled from the ground. Yet he stood tall like a wall against the coming storm. The girl watched him, her chest twisting with confusion. Why would anyone fight for her? Why would a stranger protect broken scrap? The first raider lunged. The human swung the pipe, striking the raider's mask with a crack. The alien stumbled back, roaring. The second raider rushed forward, chain whipping through the air. The girl tried to move. Her legs sparking and grinding, she nearly fell. But her repaired joint caught her weight. With effort, she grabbed a sharp shard of metal from the ground. The chain slashed close, and with a desperate swing, she cut it aside. The human glanced back, surprise flickering in his eyes. "You can fight," he said quickly. Her breath shook as she whispered, "I was a warrior once." Those words gave her strength. The junkyard that had been her prison now became her battlefield. The broken towers of machines were shields. The shards of metal were blades. Her legs screamed with sparks, but she forced them to move step after step, fighting against the years of rust and pain. The raiders grew angry. This was not supposed to happen. A discarded warrior and a lone human should have been easy prey. But together they resisted. The human's strikes were fierce and clever. The girl's movements were shaky but filled with fire. Every clash of metal rang like a bell of defiance. Then it happened. The girl tried to leap aside, but her weak leg buckled. She fell hard, pain exploding through her. A raider lifted his jagged blade, roaring in triumph. Her eyes widened, helpless. But before the strike could fall, the human was there. He threw himself between her and the blade. The weapon slashed across his shoulder, blood staining his torn uniform. He gritted his teeth but did not fall. Instead, he shoved the raider back with raw strength. The girl gasped, her chest aching. No one had ever done that for her. Not her people, not her leaders. They had only discarded her, but this human bled for her. A stranger who owed her nothing. Tears burned in her glowing eyes. She pushed herself up, ignoring the sparks from her legs. "No," she whispered fiercely. "I will not be junk." With a scream, she drove the shard of metal into the raider's chest. The scavenger collapsed, his mask shattering. The human staggered but kept fighting. Together they struck again and again. The raiders began to fall back, snarling in anger and disbelief. This was not how the hunt was meant to end. At last, silence returned. The ground was littered with broken weapons and sparks of fire. The surviving raiders retreated into the dark. Their growls fading, the human sank to his knees. Clutching his wounded shoulder, blood dripped into the dirt. The lantern's glow flickered weakly. The girl knelt beside him, her hands trembling. "You saved me," she whispered. Her voice broke, heavy with pain and wonder. "You bled for me," the human looked at her, his face pale but his eyes steady. "You're not junk," he said softly. "You never were." Her chest tightened. She wanted to deny it, to push the words away, but she couldn't, not after what he had done. For the first time in years, she felt the fire of being alive, not as discarded metal, but as a warrior. She reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. Her rusted legs sparked beneath her, but they held strong. The broken warrior was no longer alone. Yet far in the distance, a deeper roar shook the junkyard. Louder than before, heavier. The leader of the raiders had arrived, and he was coming for them both. The hunters arrived. The junkyard was quiet again. But it was not peace, it was the silence before a storm. The alien girl leaned against the broken engine, her chest rising and falling. Her legs sparked, wires glowing faintly. The human sat beside her, pressing his wounded shoulder. Blood dripped slowly into the dirt, dark under the weak lantern light. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but her voice caught in her throat. No words seemed enough for what he had done. Then the ground trembled. A heavy step echoed through the junkyard, followed by another. The broken machines rattled as if afraid. The air thickened, carrying the sound of chains dragging and metal grinding. Her glowing eyes widened in terror. She knew this sound. She had heard it long ago when she still had honor. The raider leader, the one who ruled the scavenger bands, the one who decided she was worth nothing more than scrap. He had come. The human felt the tremor and looked at her. "Who is it?" he asked. His voice was calm, but his eyes searched hers. She swallowed hard, her voice a whisper. "He is called Korgath, the Chainmaster. The one who sent me here to die." Her hands shook, sparks flicking from her fingers. "He will not leave until he takes us both." A shadow stretched across the piles of junk. The lantern light flickered as a massive figure stepped forward. Korgath towered above them, his body covered in plates of scavenged armor. Chains wrapped around his arms, dragging like the tails of beasts. His mask glowed with crimson light, two burning eyes staring down. In his voice was the grind of steel and the roar of fire. "You escaped once, broken warrior, but not again." The alien girl flinched. Every memory of shame and pain rose inside her. Her rusted legs seemed heavier, her chest tightened. She wanted to shrink back into the shadows. But the human stood up, wounded yet unbroken. He placed himself between her and the towering raider. His steel pipe held firm in his good hand, his voice steady. "She is not yours." Korgath's laughter thundered across the junkyard. Chains rattled as he swung them, sparks exploding from the scrap around. "A human dares to stand in my way," he sneered. "You bleed, you break. You die like all the others." The girl's heart raced. She wanted to stop him, to pull the human back, but her voice whispered in fear. "You cannot fight him. No one ever has." The human turned his head just slightly, his eyes catching hers. "I don't need to win," he said quietly.
"I just need to give you a chance." His words struck her like lightning.
A chance, that was something she had never been given. Her people gave her no chance when they cast her into the junkyard. Her body gave her no chance when her legs rusted away. But this human, bleeding and broken, was still willing to fight for her. Korgath roared and swung his chain. It smashed into a pile of broken machines, sending shards flying. The ground shook as he stepped closer. The human raised his pipe, ready to strike. The girl's eyes burned, torn between fear and fury. She could not let this end here. Not again, not with him. Her legs sparked violently, pain shooting through her body. But she pushed herself to stand. Every joint screamed, every wire burned. Yet she forced herself forward. Korgath's crimson eyes turned to her. "So you still walk," he growled. "You are nothing but broken parts pretending to live." She clenched her fists. Her voice trembled but grew stronger with every word. "I am more than rust, more than junk. I am still a warrior." The human's face broke into a faint smile at her words. Korgath's chains whirled, cutting through the air like blades. The battle was about to begin, but before the first strike could fall, another sound cut through the junkyard. Not chains, not roars, but the faint hum of power. Her repaired leg glowed brighter than before. The human's quick work had awakened something deep within it. A hidden spark, a forgotten power. She felt it surge through her body. For the first time since her exile, strength rushed into her bones. Her chest rose, her eyes glowed brighter. Korgath snarled, his mask burning red. The human gripped his pipe tighter, ready to fight. And the girl whispered under her breath, "This time, I am not alone." The junkyard trembled again. Chains lifted high, sparks burned in the dark, and the final clash with the raider leader was about to begin. Fire and steel Korgath's chains clashed against the ground, sparks bursting into the night. The junkyard shook under his heavy steps. The air grew hot with the sound of grinding metal and fury. The alien girl stood beside the human, her body trembling but her eyes burning bright. The repaired joint in her leg glowed faintly. Alive with hidden energy, the human gripped his steel pipe tighter, his wounded shoulder bleeding but his spirit unbroken. The chainmaster roared, "You will both be scrapped by dawn." He swung his chains in a deadly arc. The human shoved the girl aside and rolled forward. The chain smashed into a pile of engines. Shattering them into pieces, the shockwave shook the ground, scattering broken parts across the dirt. The human rose quickly, pipe in hand. He swung at Korgath's leg, metal meeting metal. The blow was strong, but the raider was stronger. Korgath laughed, yanking his chain back with force. The human was thrown to the ground. Dust rising around him. The girl's heart pounded. Her hands clenched until sparks flew from her fingertips. She could not watch him fall. Her legs screamed with pain, but she forced them forward. The glowing joint pulsed brighter with each step. She snatched a long blade of scrap from the dirt and raised it high. Korgath turned, his crimson mask burning like fire. So the broken warrior still dares to fight, he mocked. The girl gritted her teeth, her voice sharp. I am not broken anymore, she charged. Her legs sparking as she leapt. The blade struck Korgath's arm, cutting into his armor. The raider roared in anger, chains whipping violently. She was thrown back. Crashing against the wreckage, her body ached. But the spark inside her did not fade. The human staggered to his feet. Pipe raised again. He moved beside her, his voice low but steady. We fight together. For a moment the girl looked at him. Her chest tightened with something she had forgotten long ago, trust. She nodded, and they both stepped forward side by side. The raider leader swung his chains like storms. But this time they were ready. The human ducked low. Striking Korgath's leg again, the girl leapt high, her repaired joint glowing like fire. She spun her blade of scrap down onto his shoulder. Metal cracked, sparks flew, Korgath roared with fury, staggering back for the first time. The junkyard seemed alive with their battle. Broken machines toppled. Flames lit the piles of scrap. The ground was a battlefield of fire and steel. Korgath's chains lashed out again, wrapping around the girl's arm. He yanked her forward, slamming her into the ground. Her blade slipped from her hand. The human cried out and struck the chain with his pipe. The impact loosened it just enough for her to break free. She gasped for breath, her chest aching. Her glowing eyes turned to the human. Blood dripped down his face, his body weak, yet his voice was strong. Stand up, warrior, he said. You are not done, her heart blazed. For years she had been told she was useless. For years she believed she was only rust. But this human called her warrior, and in his voice she believed it too. With a scream she rose again, her legs sparked wildly. But the hidden power surged brighter. Energy pulsed through the rust, through the broken wires. Her body felt alive, stronger than before. Korgath stepped back, chains rattling with unease. What are you? He growled. The girl raised her hand, energy flickering from her palm. I am not junk, she said fiercely. I am the fire you could not kill. The human moved beside her. Pipe raised high, together they charged. The girl's glowing leg powered her leap, her blade of scrap reclaimed from the dirt. The human struck first, smashing Korgath's mask with a brutal swing. The crimson light cracked. The girl drove her blade deep into his chest, sparks exploding in a shower of fire. Korgath roared, chains flailing, but his strength faltered. The ground shook as he collapsed onto the broken machines. The chains fell silent, his crimson mask flickering before the light died out. Silence filled the junkyard once more. The flames burned softly, casting shadows over the wreckage. The human fell to one knee, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. The girl knelt beside him, her hand gripping his arm. Her voice was soft, filled with wonder. You fought for me. You bled for me? The human gave a faint smile through the pain. And you fought for me too, he whispered. You are no longer alone. Her chest trembled. For the first time since exile, she believed it. She was not alone. But the quiet did not last. From far away, horns echoed through the night. More raiders, an entire band. They had heard the fall of their leader, and now they were coming. The girl's glowing eyes hardened. She looked at the human, who still held his weapon despite the pain. We cannot stay here, she said firmly. He nodded once, steady. The junkyard was no longer her grave. It had become their battleground, and beyond it waited a world that would not expect what was coming. The bond, the night, carried the echo of horns. Long and cold, the junkyard shivered with the sound, metal rattling as if it knew what was coming. The alien girl stood tall, sparks glowing faintly from her legs. The human leaned against a shattered engine, blood running down his arm. Both were battered, but neither bowed. The ground trembled with distant footsteps, dozens, maybe more, moving toward them. The raiders had heard their leader fall. Now they marched to avenge him. The girl's glowing eyes flickered with fear, but then she looked at the human. His face pale, his uniform torn, but his eyes steady. And something inside her shifted. She reached down and helped him stand. Her rusted legs groaned, but they held for the first time in years. She carried another's weight with pride. He leaned on her shoulder, his breath rough. "You should leave me," he said quietly. "They want me dead as much as they want you." Her grip on him tightened. "No," she whispered fiercely. "No one left me before. But you stayed, you fought, you bled for me. I will not leave you." The human gave a faint smile. Pain lined his face, but there was warmth in his eyes. "Then we walked together," he said. Her chest ached, not from pain, but from something new, something she had forgotten long ago, belonging. They moved through the junkyard slowly. The lantern's light gone, only the stars above to guide them. The girl's repaired joint glowed brighter with each step. The human's weight heavy but steady against her. She whispered as they walked, "I was once a warrior, strong, fast, feared." Her voice broke. "But when my legs failed, they cast me away. They called me junk." The human listened in silence, his steps dragging but firm. When she fell quiet, he finally spoke. "You are not junk. You are more warrior now than anyone who abandoned you." His words burned into her heart. Simple but unshakable, tears blurred her glowing eyes. Though she did not stop walking. Behind them the horns echoed again, louder, closer. The raider army was entering the junkyard. Chains clattered in the dark, voices growling. The girl and the human slipped deeper between the mountains of broken machines. Every shadow felt alive, every noise a threat at last. They reached the edge of the junkyard. Beyond lay the desert plains, endless and cold. The wind carried sand across the ruins, whispering like ghosts. The girl hesitated, looking back. All her years of exile, all her shame had been here. Now it burned behind her, a graveyard of memories. The human's voice pulled her back. "Don't look behind," he said gently. "The future is ahead." She nodded slowly, and they stepped out into the desert. The stars stretched above them like an endless sea. The human stumbled, his strength fading. She caught him before he fell. Holding him close, her hands trembled. "You saved my life," she whispered. He opened his eyes weakly. "And you gave me a reason to fight," he replied. Her chest tightened again. The bond between them was no longer just survival. It was something deeper, a connection stronger than chains or rust. In his presence she felt whole, and in hers, he found purpose, but the horns returned, closer, louder, shaking the desert sands. A line of crimson lights glowed in the distance. The raiders had torches, their shadows stretching across the horizon. An army was coming. The girl clenched her fists, her legs sparking brighter. She looked down at the human, weak but still standing. "I will not let them take you," she said, her voice steady, her heart burning with fire. The human placed his hand on hers. Even in his weakness, his touch was firm. "And I will not let them take you," he said. Together they stood in the desert wind, broken, bleeding, but unbroken in spirit. The girl turned her gaze to the stars. Once they had felt cold and distant. Now they seemed alive, waiting, she whispered softly. "Maybe I was cast out so I could find you." The human looked at her, silent but knowing. No words were needed. Their bond was clear, forged in fire and steel. Far across the desert, the horns called again. The ground shook with the march of the raider army. The final hunt was coming, but for the first time in her life. The alien girl did not feel afraid, because she was no longer alone. The last stand. The desert wind howled, carrying sand across the silent plains. The alien girl and the human stood together at the edge of the junkyard. Behind them lay fire, broken machines, and the body of Korgath. The chainmaster, ahead of them, across the dunes, glowed the crimson torches of the raider army. The ground shook with their march, heavy and unending. The human's breath came slow and weak. His shoulder bled through torn cloth, his body trembling from battle. But his eyes never wavered. He looked at the girl, who stood tall despite sparks leaping from her prosthetic legs. Her silver skin glowed faintly under the starlight, her eyes burning bright. Once she had been thrown away like rusted scrap. Now she stood like fire reborn. The horns echoed again, sharp and cold. Dozens of raiders crested the dunes, chains rattling, weapons raised. Their voices roared across the night. "Kill the human. Melt the broken one." The girl clenched her fists, her glowing leg trembling with energy. She whispered under her breath, "No more." The human placed his hand on her arm. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. His voice was hoarse, filled with pain. But steady like stone, she turned to him, her chest tight. Her voice cracked but strong. I was alone for years. But not tonight. The raiders charged. Sand exploded beneath their boots, the ground rumbling with their fury. The girl stepped forward, her repaired joint glowing brighter than ever. The energy surged, running through her broken frame like lightning. Her body felt alive, stronger than it had ever been. She lifted her blade of scrap, sparks dancing across its edge beside her. The human raised his steel pipe, blood dripping down his arm. Together they stood, small against the storm but unbroken. The clash came like thunder. Chains whipped through the air. Torches burned, voices roared. The girl leapt into the fray, her glowing leg propelling her high. She landed with a crash, her blade slicing through a raider's chest. The human struck with speed, pipe-breaking masks and shattering bones. Every move was desperate, every strike fierce. They fought not as strangers, but as one. The raiders circled, snarling. But every time the girl stumbled, the human struck beside her. Every time he faltered, she rose to shield him. Their bond was a shield stronger than any armor. Their courage spread like fire. The army hesitated, their roars faltering. For the first time, the hunters felt fear. The girl's prosthetic sparked violently, heat rushing through the wires. She knew it was burning itself out, but she pushed harder, faster, stronger. She spun through the raiders, her glowing eyes fierce. "I am not junk," she cried. "I am a warrior." The human's voice followed hers, loud and sharp. "And humanity fights for those who stand." He struck down another raider, blood soaking his hands. Pain raged through him, but he refused to fall. One by one, the raiders broke. Their chains scattered, their weapons dropped. The desert filled with silence again. The army that had marched like thunder now fled into the dark. Only the stars above remained. Bright and endless, the girl stood still, her chest heaving, her glowing leg flickered weakly. The last of its hidden power fading, sparks hissed and died. She stumbled. But the human caught her before she fell. His arms shook with exhaustion, but his grip was steady. They leaned against each other, two broken souls holding one another upright. The desert wind blew gently, carrying away the ashes of battle. The human smiled faintly through blood and dust. "You are alive, warrior," he whispered. She looked at him, tears glowing in her eyes. "And you gave me life again," she said softly. Her voice trembled, but it carried truth. For a moment silence returned, not heavy, not cruel, but peaceful. The stars no longer seemed cold. They seemed like witnesses, watching as two lives changed forever. The girl tightened her grip on his arm. "Where will we go now?" she asked. Her voice low. The human looked at the horizon, where night touched the dunes. "Anywhere but here," he answered, "because wherever we go together." Her chest warmed at his words. Together, that was all she had ever wanted. Not glory, not honor, just someone who would not leave her. And now she had found it, not in her people, not in her past, but in a human who refused to abandon her. She lifted her eyes to the sky one last time. Once she had thought it was empty. Now it was endless, full of promise. The junkyard behind her no longer held her chains. It was only a place of rust and ghosts. Her true life began here with him on the edge of fire and steel. And as they stepped forward into the desert, broken but unbowed, the night carried their silence not as despair, but as hope. Hope for a warrior reborn, hope for a bond stronger than worlds, hope that even in the darkest junkyard a spark could rise. And that spark was enough to light the stars.